Hey, I'm Tanner,
And I'm Allie.
and we're the Kalinas. And today we want to talk to you guys about dating and the different types of friendship.
And before we jump into that, we want to remind you all that no matter what vocation you end up in, the ultimate goal is holiness. So whether you're going to be married, you're going to be a priest, you're going to join religious life, like the ultimate goal is always holiness.
Yeah, just because you don't feel called to the priesthood or to the religious life doesn't mean you get an easy card out. You don't get
No.
to slack. We're all called to a life of holiness. We're all called to a life of abundance.
Because ultimately, holiness is where we find our ultimate happiness, too, is in God. So, good reminder.
So, okay, to start off, we're going to paint a picture for you. I don't know if there's anyone who's watching this who, like me, wants to build their own home one day. I fancy myself as a weekend warrior, someone who's real good around the house, doing house projects, good with their hands. In reality, I've built a couple of shelves in our kitchen.
Yeah, they're nice shelves.
They're deluxe shelves. They are very nice. But if you're like me, you want to build your own home one day, then you have to lay down a good foundation for that home that is appropriate to that home. So if you want the white picket fence and tile roofing, the arch windows, a little mini Bernedoodle running in the backyard, actually, we don't recommend getting a mini Bernedoodle. We recommend getting any breed besides a mini Bernedoodle. We got a mini Bernedoodle. We wouldn't wish a mini Bernedoodle on anyone.
No, he's great. He's just a little crazy.
He's great. But if you are building a nice home, then you've got to lay down a foundation that is appropriate to that home. I couldn't lay down the foundation for a hot dog stand and expect it to turn into a really nice home one day. I don't even know if hot dog stands have foundations.
Probably not. But even if they did, that foundation wouldn't support the home that you're trying to build. And so, like we said at the beginning, like no matter what your vocation is, your like end goal is holiness. In the same way, no matter what your vocation is, you need to build a strong foundation so that holiness can flourish in your life.
That the home that we're building in this analogy is a life of holiness.
Yes. And so the foundation when it comes to dating and hopefully someday marriage needs to be a virtuous friendship.
Yeah, because marriage is the ultimate virtuous friendship. And what is a virtuous friendship? Well, Aristotle and all of Western philosophy that has come after him have talked about three types of friendship. The first type of friendship is a friendship of utilitarianism. These are friendships in which it behooves both parties to be in that friendship. They derive some sort of benefit from being in that friendship. So think about your classmates or your co-workers or your teammates. It behooves both of you to be in that friendship with one another.
Yeah, and you gain something by being friends with that person. In the same way, there's a friendship of pleasure where you derive some sort of pleasure from being in a friendship or relationship with that person. So think of like someone who likes to eat an egregious amount of ice cream and you do too. Like it might behoove you to be friends.
I like the word behoove.
It might behoove you to be friends because you both can like go and eat a bunch of ice cream together, you know?
And it gives you a sort of pleasure there. Or maybe you have a concert buddy, Your friendship is rooted in the good times that you share with one another. And then there's a third type of friendship, friendships of virtue. These are friendships in which the friendship is rooted outside of the friendship. I just said friendship so many different times.
Friendship.
But these friendships are rooted in the good life, a moral life, a life of virtue, a life of holiness, a life of discipleship with Christ.
When we look at these three types of friendship and we look at our culture tends to hover at the first two types of friendship, friendships of pleasure, friendships of utilitarianism. And so when we look at dating relationships in this modern culture, they also tend to hover in those two types of friendship as well. As Christians, it's important that our dating relationships are actually deeper than that. They're actually friendships of virtue.
Yeah, because there's a potential trajectory towards marriage, and marriage is the ultimate friendship of virtue, then our dating relationships need to be set apart from our other types of friendships. They need to be friendships of virtue. So in another video we've talked about how every dating relationship that you have, no matter if it ends in marriage or a breakup, should leave you a holier version of yourself. And in order to gauge if that's happening or not, we've made another video about our make or break question, and that make or break question ultimately being, does the other person believe sainthood is real? Can I chase sainthood with this person?
Is holiness possible?
Is holiness possible? And in this video, we want to give you guys a deeper reflection that you can use to assess your relationship and see if it is indeed a friendship of virtue.
So looking at your own dating relationship and then thinking about these three types of friendship, start like asking yourself the question of like, is this a friendship of utility? Is this a friendship of pleasure? Is it a friendship of virtue? How can I move from a friendship of utility to a friendship of virtue, or a friendship of pleasure to a friendship of virtue? How do I keep pushing this relationship to the trajectory of being virtuous?
Oftentimes we think that, of course I'm in this dating relationship, we're trying our best, we're trying to follow Jesus. Of course it's making us holier versions of ourselves.
Of course it's virtuous.
Of course it's a friendship of virtue. But let's ask ourselves a few more deeper questions here. Thinking about a friendship of utilitarianism. Am I in this relationship that I'm in because I gain something from it? Do I gain some sort of social currency with my friends? Do I gain some sort of popularity? Do I gain some sort of comfort around my family knowing that I'm in a relationship and I'm not single? Am I getting some sort of benefit from being in this relationship? And is that benefit the root of my relationship? Am I staying in this relationship because of that? Going a little bit deeper, am I in this relationship because I'm afraid of being lonely? And this relationship gives me an ability to not be lonely. Am I staying in this relationship because I'm afraid of being alone and I don't trust that another person could come along or that the Lord has someone else in store for me in my life?
And then thinking about your relationship in regards to a friendship of pleasure, if you're feeling like maybe that is what my relationship is rooted in, you might need to ask yourself some deeper questions of, am I dating this person because of the good feelings that they give me? Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like Tanner and I, like when we were dating, felt like really good things, a lot of good things.
Tons of butterflies.
Yeah, tons of butterflies. We were really excited about each other. But was that like the depth of it, right? Like, was that all it was? Was like, oh, I just like feel good around Tanner.
Was I staying in that relationship simply because of those feelings?
It felt good.
If those feelings were to fade, would this relationship have any substance?
Right. And like, I think when it comes to friendships of pleasure, especially in terms of dating, we do need to touch on chastity, because I think a lot of relationships, when we're struggling with chastity, we're staying in the relationship because of that, like almost like false sense of pleasure we're gaining from it. So really digging deep in this area and being like, if I didn't have that
insert
sin when it comes to chastity, does this relationship hold any weight? And I feel like oftentimes when you take away that false sense of pleasure from a relationship like that, the relationship crumbles. So being really honest with yourself, is this relationship just about the pleasure that I'm deriving from it?
Yeah, and am I willing to converse with the person that I'm dating about that insert sin and remove it and dare to see if the relationship upholds? If I'm not willing to have that conversation, you might be stuck in a friendship of pleasure there.
Yes. And like ultimately a friendship of virtue, you're going to have to sacrifice things to will the good of the other person, right? And even like when we talk about like sex, like that's a good thing in the right context. You have to sacrifice that good thing for the great thing that it is when it comes to marriage.
And so when looking at your dating relationship in light of a friendship of virtue, how do you know if your dating relationship is a friendship of virtue? Some good questions to ask yourself. Well, I mean, are we holding ourselves accountable in regards to chastity? Are we striving for that? Are we holding each other accountable to going to church on Sunday? Do we talk about that with one another? Do we have spiritual conversations with one another?
Yeah, are we willing to have hard conversations with one another and really hear each other out? Am I willing for the other person to have a hard conversation with me and not like let it just blow up into something, but really receive that from them?
I think that's one of the best gauges for a friendship of virtue is when this person calls me higher, am I willing to receive that and willing to listen to that? And vice versa, is the other person willing to receive that if I were to call them higher, and are they willing to listen to that? If that's not there, then that means that the relationship might not be rooted outside of them striving for betterment and striving for holiness and striving for deeper and deeper perfection.
Right, because this sounds really cheesy, but ultimately a relationship, we can't just be like running at each other. We should be running with each other towards God, right? Towards holiness.
It's so cheesy.
It's so cheesy, but it's so good because like, yeah, our relationship needs to be rooted outside of ourselves. And what is that outside of ourselves but like trying to get to heaven? And so this might be like a really practical one, but like, am I actually growing in virtue? Like looking at the fruit of my life, am I growing in virtue or am I like growing in vice, right? So like what are virtues? Like patience, trust, hope, faith, love, kindness, gentleness. There's so many different virtues. So like, am I growing in those while I'm dating this person or am I becoming like lazy, angry, bitter, jealous, like all these different things?
Jesus says you will know a tree by its fruit. A good thing to examine your life is what fruit is being born in this relationship. Is it good fruit or is it bad fruit? If it's good fruit, you're probably in a friendship of virtue.
If it's bad fruit, then you might need to reevaluate. And that's okay because sometimes we end up in relationships that like they aren't the one for us, right? And it's okay to like recognize that and move along.
But if if your relationship does have some good things, to go back to our house analogy, you can always lay down a foundation. But that requires vulnerability and being honest about what you want and what you expect in a relationship with the other person.
If you're not heading towards the same thing, then it's probably not going to be a very strong house that you're building.
Yeah, if I want this really nice house one day and the person I'm with just wants to live in a hot dog stand, well, the foundation that we're laying is going to be wonky and different there. We have to be on the same terms.
And so if you're in a dating relationship, it's really important to think about these three types of friendship and think about what kind of friendship am I building with this person? Is it a friendship of pleasure? Is it a friendship of utility? Is it a friendship of virtue, which is what we're really trying to strive for? Because at the end of the day, all of us, no matter what vocation we're going to end up in, we're striving for holiness.
So that was our word of encouragement to you guys today. Thank you so much. If you like this video, please do click subscribe. Give us a comment below. Maybe there's some other questions that you have in regards to examining whether a relationship is a friendship of utilitarianism or a friendship of pleasure or a friendship of virtue. If you have some ideas, please drop those in the comments. We'd love to hear them.
Love to hear.
Until next time, my friends, please know we're praying for you. Please pray for us.
Yeah, and thanks so much for listening. Have a good one.